It is the second 2021 Orimeda winner of Medarot S, finally making their grand debut. It is DRD00 Antura, with a kit of Stealth, Laser, Field Repair, Biped Legs, and the leg ability of Generator, which grants Heater effect to self when charging Metaforce. Now, quite true to the Druid motif that Antura is certainly going for, I'd say the kit is pretty well scattered as a support-based role more than a designated shooting or designated fighting one, more or less. Stealth, of course, is a support skill that renders the user untouchable and untargetable unless they're already being targeted until they finish their cooldown and their next heat phase. This stealth also allows them to bypass any shields that are in play or anything that might potentially hinder them from action or intercept an attack that was geared towards an intended target. Laser, of course, is an optic-based shooting skill, so it does have a very solid base power, especially at that 1508, but it does also get a times 1.5 damage bonus at 30% charge, and a times 2 damage bonus at 100% charge. So arguably, this is going to be Antura's most dedicated form of attack if he does need to be used on the field for offense at all. Left arm is Field Repair, which is a healing-based skill that restores lost HP to damaged parts across the build. As denoted by the explosive symbol, it's going to heal all parts at once upon use. However, the caveat to Field Repair is that the level of healing and the efficiency of said healing is relative and scales based on the legs match to the terrain in question. So on most terrains, like say Forest in this case, for Biped Legs, which they get S rank on, you'd probably see some very solid healing across the board, especially for it being an AoE type healing, but on terrains such as maybe desert or wasteland where you're not as good with Biped Legs, you probably will not be seeing near as much or near as efficient type of healing if you were choosing to go with that. So across the build, I'd say very solid and dedicated, probably auxiliary shoot support more than dedicated conventional shooting than anything else. As a pure set score, I would honestly rate it about a 6 out of 10. Not to say that it's bad or it has a bad kit, it's rather scattered. Again, I'm going to keep touching on the fact that it's a dedicated support shooting role, so it's not designed to be your main fighter or your main source of damage when in battle. In fact, if you wanted to use Antura correctly, you probably would only touch that laser if there was nothing else for Antura to do, such as, for instance, using Stealth to keep covered, or using Field Repair if everyone's already healthy. Stats across the board, though, are a little... I'd say they're in that decent sweet spot, but just a little fragile, especially for that left arm at about 2,900, barely 3,000 there. Head, of course, at 3,350. Right arm at about 3,200. Legs at 3,600, which is pretty solid. The biggest pain point I see with the legs, however, is the problem that they have a melee resist of 247. That means that against most shooting targets, that 1666 is really going to come in play for helping reduce damage. But that 247 of the melee resist is really, really going to hurt Antura in this case. As maybe say, for instance, someone like Titan Beetle, Tyrell Beetle, Monjuro, or anyone just in general that has a melee-based skill, Antura is really going to be hurting from that with very little ways in terms of resisting damage and reducing damage when taking hits from melee-based skills. But the evade stat across the board at 1038 isn't too shabby either. Mobility at just under 670. Probably it doesn't mean Antura is going to be the fastest on the field, but if you can pair it off properly with, say, using Stealth to kind of keep Antura covered, you can probably overcome this relatively decently. As mixed parts, I would rate it about an equal 6 out of 10, maybe a 7 depending on the situation. Stealth, of course, you could generally never go wrong with as a support skill, especially if you want to keep your nuker or maybe your ailment fighter. As someone who doesn't want to get touched, or especially if there's a shield on the opposing side that you want to bypass, Field Repair you probably won't make the best use of unless in a very situational circumstance, but that laser part for sure I believe would be very useful in most situations, especially with it having a high base damage at a pretty decent heat cool as well in about the 500s. So across the board, Antura is definitely going to be a very nice addition. Looking forward to seeing it officially in game, but it is a rather scattered, and I will emphasize this one last time, support-oriented shooting kit.